Hi. What Alison and I have been talking about when it comes to this notion of blending tools for effective participation, engagement and collaboration is how we need to perceive things much more holistically. It's very easy to get caught up in the atomization of what this tool does and what this function is and how I might teach a lesson using Teams or how I might teach using Moodle. In fact, if we're going to properly get to grips with the capacities and the limitations of these tools, we need to make really strong connections between what our purposes are, the pedagogic approach, the aims, the goals, and the tools that are available, and bring them together in a way that is effective. So just by way of introduction to this, I thought I would offer you a kind of quick whiz through some of those things that we want to talk about and how they might connect together. So let's start by thinking about this whole notion of blending tools. We're going to have the tools, our goals, our needs, and then think about the choices that we need to make. So we've got a range of things that we might consider to be institutionally specific, such things as Panopto and Mentimeter and Moodle and Microsoft Office. And then within that, of course, we've got other things that are specific to your discipline. So you might, for example, have things that only you in your team will use for a very specific purpose. And they don't necessarily need to sit separate and alone and isolated. They too might need to be combined with other tools. In addition to that, you might have third-party apps, and we'll come to some suggestions for those in just a minute. But what I mean by that is applications, pieces of software, programs that are not illicit or illegal in terms of the way that we work at the University of Greenwich, but are tools that aren't actually supported. Perhaps you might be using a free version of it, so you have to deal with issues of freemium software, for example, such as the one that I'm using to display this mind map, which will have adverts in it as I'm trying to author things like this mind map or a quiz if I'm using the free version. So also within Microsoft Office, of course, we have the two main things that people use: Microsoft Teams, which has been pushed forward, integrated so that we can host webinar sessions, and of course the somewhat ubiquitous PowerPoint. And its role in online teaching, I think, needs to be questioned a little. In terms of the discipline specific, something that occurred to me straight away was SPSS. Third-party apps, common ones like YouTube and Google Drive, but don't use a personal Google Drive, of course, and things like S'more, which is something that I use and can be used for free with limitations to sort of corral and pull together video content, which I can then put into my Moodle pages in a much more coherent and organized way. And coherence is a word that I'll be using a lot today, I think. This is just another example, the Go Conquer mind maps. And don't forget that we have an institutional license for Adobe Creative Cloud, which enables you to use things like Adobe Spark and Adobe Premiere Rush, which is very, very useful for editing videos. So then we need to start thinking about what we're aiming for, what our goals are. And the assumption here, of course, is that we're keen on engagement, that we're keen on participation, that we're keen on collaboration. We can utilize Moodle as a sort of scroll of death portal to all of the PDFs that we've ever found interesting and useful and whack them all in there and take quite a didactic approach. That, after all, is the template and model of university. But maybe not. Maybe we want to go for that. And that is an assumption that's built into this session. And that's the first aspect that leads us towards considering what our pedagogy is. The next thing we do need to think about are what the needs are. Our personal needs are that we should be informed by experience, the nature of the cohort, and of course the evidence. We need to be clear with our signposting. We need to provide opportunities for socialization and socializing, as we've made clear, I think, on considerable occasions before, and we need coherence and clarity of purpose throughout, and that sits within our pedagogy as part of the driving forces. And then questions we can ask ourselves are, what is my purpose? Which tools will I use? And I suppose, above all, how will I combine them? How will I blend them in order to address those needs and fulfill the demands that I've imposed upon myself by trying to shape a new pedagogy for these new ways of working?